I'm Beatrice, 34 years old, and the founder of a tech company worth millions. At 17, I thought every college rejected me, crushing my dreams and self-worth. 10 years later, I discovered the truth: my family had hidden my USC full scholarship acceptance letter to keep my sister in the spotlight. They stole my future to protect hers. Now, after years of silence, they've suddenly reappeared, asking for my financial help. Before I tell you what happened when they came crawling back, drop a comment letting me know if you've ever discovered a life-changing lie, and hit subscribe if you want more stories about family betrayal and the sweet taste of karmic justice. Growing up in our modest two-story house in Seattle, I always felt like an afterthought in my own family. My older sister Audrey, just 3 years, my senior, was the sun around which our family orbited. From the moment she scored in the 99th percentile on her first grade reading test, my parents, Richard and Catherine Walsh, decided she was destined for greatness. Our living room walls chronicled Audrey's journey to excellence: spelling bee trophies, science fair medals, academic achievement certificates. My mother, a high school English teacher, spent hours helping Audrey prepare for competitions and advanced placement exams. My father, an accountant at a local firm, bragged about her accomplishments to anyone who would listen. Audrey just made the National Honor Society, he would announce at neighborhood barbecues, his chest puffed with pride. She's definitely headed for an Ivy League school. I wasn't unintelligent by any measure. In fact, my report cards showed grades nearly identical to Audrey's. The difference was that her achievements were celebrated as evidence of exceptional brilliance, while mine were simply expected. "Of course you got an A in math," my mother would say dismissively. "It's an easy subject." This despite the fact that I was taking the same advanced classes Audrey had taken at my age. When I brought home a perfect score on a difficult science test in 6th grade, my father glanced at it and said, "That's nice, B. Did you see that Audrey was selected for the State Science Symposium?" By the time I reached high school, I had accepted my position as the lesser daughter. I stopped showing my parents my achievements, knowing they would be overshadowed by whatever Audrey was doing at her prestigious private university that my parents stretched their finances to afford. I found my passion almost by accident during sophomore year when I took an introductory computer science class. Something about coding spoke to me in a way nothing else had before. The logic, the problem solving, the creativity within structure, it all just clicked. For the first time, I felt like I had found something that was truly mine, not just a pale imitation of Audrey's interests. I began spending hours in the computer lab after school, teaching myself programming languages beyond what was covered in class. I created my first app at 16, a simple tool to help students organize their homework assignments. It wasn't revolutionary, but my computer science teacher, Mr. Hoffman, told me I had a rare talent. "You have a gift for this, Beatrice," he said after reviewing my code. "You should really consider studying computer science in college." When I excitedly told my parents about the app over dinner that night, my mother barely looked up from serving the salad. "That's nice, dear, but don't spend too much time playing on computers. Colleges look for well-rounded students, not just tech geeks." "It's not playing, Mom," I tried to explain. "I'm actually coding. I built an application from scratch." She replied absently. "Audrey called today. She got the research assistant position at the biology lab. The professor said she might be able to co-author a paper as an undergraduate. Isn't that wonderful?" My father launched into excited questions about Audrey's research, and my accomplishment was forgotten entirely. Despite their indifference, I continued developing my programming skills throughout high school. I joined the computer club, participated in hackathons, and even won a regional coding competition. My parents attended none of these events, always finding reasons why they couldn't make it. Usually, those reasons involved something related to Audrey. By senior year, I was determined to finally earn their respect through college admissions. Audrey had been accepted to an elite East Coast university, and while my parents couldn't afford to send another child to such an expensive school, I hoped that winning admission to a prestigious program might finally make them see me. I set my sights on the University of Southern California. Their computer science program was among the best in the country, and being accepted there would be a clear validation of my abilities. I spent months perfecting my application, writing and rewriting my personal statement, gathering recommendation letters, and maintaining my perfect GPA. I applied to 12 schools in total, including several backup options. Mr. Hoffman reviewed my applications and told me I had an excellent chance at most of them, particularly given my unique coding portfolio. These schools would be lucky to have you, Beatrice, he assured me, especially USC. Their computer science department would be a perfect fit for your talents. For the first time, I allowed myself to hope that my future might include the recognition I'd been seeking my entire life. If I could just get into USC, maybe then my parents would finally see that I was just as capable, just as special as Audrey. Maybe then I would finally matter. As winter turned to spring, I checked the mail obsessively, hoping for thick envelopes signaling acceptance. Meanwhile, Audrey had been accepted to 3 prestigious medical schools, causing my parents to throw her an elaborate celebration dinner. Just think, my mother gushed, our daughter a doctor. Richard, we've done something right with this one. I sat quietly at the dinner table, picking at my food and wondering if they would ever speak about me with such pride. In my heart, I believed USC might be my last chance to prove myself worthy of their attention. March arrived, bringing with it the anxiety of college decision season. Every day after school, I would race home to check the mail before my parents returned from work. Each time I found the mailbox empty, my stomach knotted a little tighter. Meanwhile, Audrey had decided to attend Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, a decision that prompted my parents to throw yet another celebration. This time, they invited extended family and friends, spending money we didn't really have on catering and decorations. It's worth it, I overheard my mother telling my aunt. How often does a family produce a future surgeon? We need to mark these milestones. As March progressed, the letters finally began arriving. I opened the first one with trembling fingers, only to feel my heart sink at the words, "We regret to inform you." It was from the University of Washington, one of my safety schools. If they had rejected me, what hope did I have for the more competitive programs? The pattern continued throughout the month. One by one, rejections arrived from every school I had applied to. Some were outright rejections, others were waitlist notifications that felt like polite no's. With each letter, my confidence crumbled a little more. My parents' reactions only deepened my pain. "Well, college isn't for everyone," my father said dismissively after my 5th rejection. "Maybe you should look into trade schools or something." "I told you not to focus so much on those computer games," my mother added. "Colleges want students with broader interests." By late April, I had received rejections from 11 schools, with only USC still outstanding. I clung to that last hope with desperate intensity, even as the logical part of my brain told me it was unlikely I would be accepted to my most ambitious choice after being rejected by easier targets. When the mail came that Friday afternoon, I saw the envelope from USC and knew immediately from its thinness that it contained a rejection. I took it to my room before opening it, not wanting my parents to witness my final disappointment. The letter was brief and standard. "We regret to inform you that we are unable to offer you admission to the University of Southern California for the fall semester." I sat on my bed for hours, the letter crumpled in my hand, tears silently streaming down my face. It wasn't just the rejection that hurt, but what it represented: confirmation of what my family had always implied, that I wasn't special, wasn't exceptional, wasn't worthy of the same opportunities as Audrey. At dinner that night, I quietly informed my parents that USC had rejected me as well. "So that's all of them then?" my father asked between bites of lasagna. I nodded, unable to speak around the lump in my throat. "Well, we always knew you weren't Ivy League material," my mother said matter-of-factly. "You're just not academically inclined like your sister." "I had a 4.0 GPA, I protested weakly. "I won the regional coding competition." "How am I not academically inclined?" "Those computer things are just hobbies, Beatrice," she replied. "Real academic achievement is what Audrey has accomplished. Perhaps you should consider taking a year off to figure out what you actually want to do with your life." My father nodded in agreement. "The community college has some decent programs. You could live at home, take some basic courses, see if anything sticks. Not everyone needs a fancy university degree. Their words cut deeper than any rejection letter. Not only had I failed to get into college, but my parents seemed almost satisfied by this outcome, as if it confirmed their long-held belief that I was the lesser daughter. Graduation day was a special kind of torture. I watched as my classmates celebrated their acceptances to various universities, their futures bright with possibility. When people asked me where I would be attending in the fall, I mumbled vague answers about taking some time to figure things out. The pity in their eyes was unbearable. Mr. Hoffman seemed particularly confused by my situation. "I don't understand," he said when I told him none of the schools had accepted me. "With your grades and your coding portfolio, you should have had multiple offers. Are you sure there wasn't some mistake?" But there was no mistake, only the crushing reality that I wasn't good enough. Not for USC, not for any university, and certainly not for my parents' approval. As summer began, I fell into a deep depression. I spent most days in my room, my laptop untouched, my passion for coding temporarily extinguished by disappointment. Why bother excelling at something no one valued? My parents, meanwhile, were busy helping Audrey prepare for her move to Baltimore. Shopping trips for professional clothing, discussions about apartment options near the medical campus, excited planning for her white coat ceremony. Their joy in her success only highlighted the stark contrast with their disappointment in me. "We've enrolled you in 3 classes at Northside Community College for the fall semester," my mother informed me one evening. "Basic English, introductory algebra, and a computer class since you seem to like that. Nothing too challenging to start." The patronizing tone in her voice made it clear they had accepted my mediocrity and adjusted their expectations accordingly. In their eyes, I was a disappointment they were learning to live with. I nodded silently, too defeated to argue. Maybe they were right. Maybe I had overestimated my abilities all along. Maybe this was all I was meant for. Fall arrived, and with it, my new reality as a community college student still living in my childhood bedroom. The contrast between my life and Audrey's couldn't have been more stark. While she was settling into her apartment near Johns Hopkins and beginning her medical training, I was driving my mom's old Honda Civic to a campus 5 miles from home, taking basic courses I could have passed in my sleep. The only class that offered any challenge was the introductory programming course, and even that was far below my skill level. The instructor, Professor Marcus Davis, noticed this within the first week. "Miss Walsh," he said after class one day, "may I speak with you for a moment?" I approached his desk expecting criticism for my obvious boredom during lectures. "I've been reviewing your coding assignments," he said, "and I have to ask, why are you in this intro-level class? Your work shows a level of proficiency well beyond what we teach here." I shrugged, not wanting to delve into my failures. "It's just what my parents signed me up for." "Do you mind showing me what else you've worked on?" he asked. Reluctantly, I pulled out my laptop and showed him some of the apps and programs I'd developed in high school. As he scrolled through my portfolio, his eyebrows rose higher. "Beatrice, this is exceptional work," he said finally. "You don't belong in this class. Frankly, you don't belong at this college at all. You should be at a top-tier computer science program." His words reopened the wound of my rejections. I applied. Nobody wanted me. Professor Marcus looked skeptical. "With this portfolio, that doesn't make sense." He seemed to consider something before continuing. "Have you ever heard of Innovate Bootcamp in San Francisco?" I shook my head. "It's an intensive 6-month program for gifted coders. Very selective, but based on what I'm seeing, you'd be a strong candidate. They have excellent connections to the tech industry. Many graduates end up at top companies or founding their own startups." "I can't afford something like that," I said immediately, "and my parents wouldn't support it." "They offer scholarships," he replied. "The next cohort begins in January. Applications are due in November. Promise me you'll at least look into it." That evening, I researched Innovate Bootcamp online. Everything about it excited me: the curriculum, the instructors, the location in the heart of the tech industry. The idea of escaping my parents' house and starting fresh in a place where no one compared me to Audrey was intoxicating. I began the application process in secret, working on it during breaks between classes and late at night when my parents were asleep. Professor Marcus wrote me a glowing recommendation letter and helped me polish my submission. "This is your chance to restart," he told me, "to be judged on your own merits, not against your sister or anyone else." The weeks of waiting for a response were agonizing but different from the college application period. This time I kept my hopes private, protected from my parents' dismissal. In mid-December, I received an email that changed everything. I had been accepted to Innovate Bootcamp with a partial scholarship covering 70% of the tuition. I would still need to find a way to pay for living expenses in San Francisco, one of the most expensive cities in the country, but for the first time in over a year, I felt a spark of hope. Telling my parents proved as difficult as I had anticipated. San Francisco. For a computer camp, my mother said incredulously when I finally gathered the courage to share my news. "That's not a real education, Beatrice." "It's not a camp, Mom. It's one of the most prestigious coding boot camps in the country. Graduates get hired by Google, Apple, and other major tech companies." "Sounds like a scam to me," my father chimed in. "They're just taking advantage of kids who couldn't get into real colleges." "I got a scholarship," I said, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. "Professor Marcus says I have real talent. This could be the start of an actual career." "Playing around on computers isn't a career," my mother retorted. "Not a serious one anyway. Not like medicine." And there it was, the inevitable comparison to Audrey's chosen path. "Tech is one of the fastest-growing industries in the world," I argued. "The starting salaries are comparable to many medical specialties without the years of residency." My father shook his head. "We're not paying for you to run off to California for some computer hobby, Beatrice. If you want to continue living here, you'll stay enrolled at the community college." I took a deep breath. "I'm going with or without your support. I'm 18. I got the scholarship. I've saved enough from my summer jobs to cover the remaining tuition and get started in San Francisco. I can find roommates and a part-time job." The shock on their faces would have been satisfying if it weren't also tinged with something like disgust. "If you do this," my mother said coldly, "don't expect us to bail you out when it fails, and it will fail." "Fine," I replied, a strange calm settling over me. "I won't ask for anything." The weeks before my departure passed in icy silence. My parents made no effort to help me prepare, treating my impending move as an act of rebellion rather than an educational opportunity. When Audrey called home during her winter break, they didn't even mention my plans to her. On a cold January morning, I loaded my 2 suitcases into an Uber headed for the airport. My mother gave me a perfunctory hug at the door while my father simply nodded from the hallway. "Good luck, Beatrice," she said, her tone suggesting she expected anything but success for me. As the plane took off, carrying me away from Seattle and the shadow of my sister, I felt a mix of terror and exhilaration. For the first time in my life, I was making a decision based solely on what I wanted, what I was good at, what might make me happy. The weight of my parents' disappointment seemed to diminish with each mile of distance between us. Landing in San Francisco felt like arriving on a new planet. The energy of the city, the diversity, the sense of innovation in the air, all of it spoke to something deep inside me. I took a shared shuttle to the apartment I'd found on a tech message board where 3 other bootcamp students had a spare room available. My new roommates, all slightly older than me, and from various parts of the country, welcomed me without preconceptions or comparisons. They saw me only as Beatrice the coder from Seattle, not as Audrey's less impressive sister. That night, lying on an unfamiliar mattress in a city where no one knew my name, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: possibility. Whatever happened next would be entirely of my own making. The Innovate Bootcamp facility occupied 3 floors of a converted warehouse in San Francisco's Soma district. On my first day, I stood outside the industrial chic building, heart pounding with equal parts excitement and terror. Through the large windows, I could see open workspaces filled with people hunched over laptops, whiteboards covered in code snippets, and small groups engaged in intense discussions. This was a world away from the sterile community college classrooms I'd left behind. This was an environment built for creation, innovation, and transformation. First day, asked a voice beside me. I turned to see a woman about 5 years older than me, coffee cup in hand, smiling knowingly. "Is it that obvious?" I replied. "Only because you've been standing out here for 5 minutes looking terrified," she laughed. "I'm Danny, teaching assistant for the back-end development track." "Beatrice," I said, shaking her outstretched hand, "I'm not sure which track I'm in yet." "Well, Beatrice, the only way to find out is to go inside." Those first weeks at Innovate were the most intellectually stimulating of my life. The program was designed to be immersive and intense with 12-hour days of coding lectures, workshops, and collaborative projects. We started with fundamentals but progressed at a pace that would have been impossible in a traditional academic setting. Financial reality set in quickly. Even with my partial scholarship, San Francisco was breathtakingly expensive. I found a weekend job at a coffee shop near our apartment, which meant I was effectively working 7 days a week, coding for 12 hours, then making lattes for another 8. Sleep became a luxury. Meals were often granola bars consumed while debugging. My roommates, all facing similar financial constraints, created a rotating cooking schedule to save money and ensure we ate at least one proper meal daily. Despite the exhaustion, I thrived in ways I never had before. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who spoke my language, who valued the skills I possessed, who challenged me to grow rather than diminish myself to fit others' expectations. My instructor, Raj, recognized my potential early on. "Your approach to problem solving is unique," he told me, after reviewing one of my projects. "You see patterns and connections that others miss." During our 3rd month, we were tasked with developing an original application as a midterm project. I created a platform that helped small businesses optimize their inventory management using predictive algorithms. When I presented it to the cohort, the room fell silent for a moment before erupting in applause. "This is production-quality work," Raj said, examining my code. "With some refinement, this could be marketable." His words planted a seed in my mind, though I was too busy surviving day to day to nurture it yet. Communication with my family during this period was minimal. I sent occasional text messages to let them know I was still alive, receiving brief acknowledgments in return. They never asked about my studies or my progress. When I mentioned earning the highest score on our midterm project, my mother replied only with, "That's nice. Audrey just published her first research paper." As the boot camp progressed, recruiters from various tech companies began visiting our cohort, observing our work, and conducting informal interviews. By the 5th month, many of my classmates were receiving job offers for positions starting after graduation. During one such recruitment event, a representative from a mid-sized data analytics company took particular interest in my inventory management application. "We've been trying to develop something similar for our retail clients," she explained. "Your approach is elegant. Would you be interested in interviewing for a junior developer position? The starting salary is $90,000 plus benefits." The figure stunned me. It was more than twice what my father earned after 20 years at his accounting firm. I accepted the interview opportunity immediately. 2 weeks later, I had 3 job offers, ultimately accepting a position at Dataflow Analytics as a software engineer with a $95,000 starting salary. When I called my parents to share the news, my father answered, "Dad, I got a job," I said, unable to contain my excitement. Dataflow Analytics offered me a software engineering position at $95,000 a year. There was a pause. "That can't be right," he finally said. "Nobody pays that kind of money to someone without a degree. They're hiring me based on my skills and my work, not my education." I explained. "The tech industry values ability over credentials." "Well," he said, his voice tight, "I suppose that's fine for now, until you decide to go back to school for a real career." I ended the call shortly after, my excitement dampened, but not extinguished. Their approval no longer seemed as vital as it once had. Graduation from Innovate came and went. I moved into my own studio apartment, tiny, but all mine, and began my new job. The work was challenging and engaging, the company culture supportive and merit-based. I threw myself into learning everything I could, volunteering for additional projects, and spending evenings exploring new programming languages and frameworks. Within 18 months, I was promoted to senior developer with another substantial salary increase. My innovative approaches to several key projects had caught the attention of upper management, and I was given increasing responsibility for product development. During this period, my contact with my family dwindled further. I didn't visit Seattle for holidays using work as an excuse. In truth, I couldn't bear the thought of sitting at the family dinner table, listening to detailed updates about Audrey's medical career, while my own success was minimized or ignored. I did make the trip home when Audrey graduated from medical school, feeling obligated to attend this family milestone. The entire weekend was predictably focused on her accomplishment. My parents had decorated the house with banners and photographs of Audrey in her white coat. Extended family flew in from across the country to celebrate. At the post-graduation dinner, relatives dutifully asked what I was doing these days, their expressions showing mild confusion when I explained my role as a senior software developer. "Is that like IT support?" my uncle asked. "Fixing computers when they break." Before I could correct him, my mother interjected, "Beatrice is doing computer work in California until she figures out her real career path." I was 25 years old, earning more than both my parents combined, leading development teams on projects worth millions of dollars, and in their eyes, I was still just killing time until I found a real career. That night in my childhood bedroom, I overheard my parents in the kitchen talking to my grandmother. "Of course we're proud of both our girls," my mother was saying, "but Audrey is saving lives as a doctor. That's a calling, not just a job. Beatrice Island, well, she's still finding her way." The familiar pain of dismissal washed over me, but now it was accompanied by something new: resolve. I didn't need their validation anymore. I had proven my worth to myself and to an industry that recognized my talent. 2 weeks after returning to San Francisco, I submitted my resignation at Dataflow. It was time to pursue the idea that had been growing in my mind since the boot camp my own company built around the advanced version of my inventory management system that I'd been developing in my spare time. I had savings industry connections and unwavering belief in my vision. At 25, I stepped off the safe career path and into the uncertain world of entrepreneurship with no family safety net to catch me if I fell. 2 years after founding my company Next Level Inventory Solutions, we secured our first major round of funding, $8 million from a venture capital firm, impressed by our innovative approach to supply chain management. Our client list included several Fortune 500 companies, and our team had grown from just me to 15 talented developers and business specialists. I had recently purchased a loft apartment in San Francisco's Mission District, my first real home that wasn't a rental. As I settled into the space, I realized I had few personal mementos from my pre-San Francisco life. On impulse, I called my parents and asked if they could ship some of my childhood belongings that I'd left behind. "We've been meaning to clear out your room anyway," my mother said. "Audrey might need to move back home for a few months between her residency and fellowship." A week later, a large box arrived. I opened it one evening after work, glass of wine in hand, curious what pieces of my past my parents had deemed worth sending. Inside were yearbooks, a few participation trophies from middle school sports, some old journals, and various memorabilia from my youth. Nothing particularly meaningful, but nostalgic nonetheless. At the bottom of the box, beneath an old science fair certificate, I noticed a large manila envelope, yellowed with age, unopened. Curious, I pulled it out. My heart stopped when I saw the return address, University of Southern California Office of Admissions. With trembling hands, I carefully opened the sealed envelope. Inside was a thick packet of papers, the first page bearing a letterhead dated March 15, 2007, more than 10 years earlier. "Dear Miss Beatrice Walsh," it began. "Congratulations! It is with great pleasure that we offer you admission to the University of Southern California's class of 2011. Furthermore, based on your exceptional academic record and impressive coding portfolio, we are pleased to offer you the President's Scholarship covering full tuition, room and board for 4 years of study. The letter slipped from my fingers and fluttered to the floor. I couldn't breathe. The room seemed to spin around me as the implications crashed through my consciousness like a wrecking ball. I had been accepted, with a full scholarship, to my dream school. But I had never received this letter. I had never known. With rising panic, I dumped the rest of the box onto my living room floor, searching frantically through the contents. Hidden among old school notebooks, I found more unopened envelopes from colleges. Tearing them open one by one, I discovered acceptances from 6 other universities, including 3 offering partial scholarships. The truth hit me with physical force, driving me to my knees amid the scattered papers of my past. I hadn't been rejected by every school. I had been accepted by 7 of them, including USC, with a full-ride scholarship. Someone had intercepted these letters, hidden them from me, and allowed me to believe I was a failure. There was only one explanation: my parents had deliberately concealed these acceptances from me. The room felt airless as rage, grief, and betrayal coursed through me. 17-year-old Beatrice had spiraled into depression, believing herself unworthy and unwanted by every university. She had accepted community college as her only option, her dreams of computer science at USC shattered. All while these letters sat hidden somewhere in my parents' house. The next morning, still reeling from the discovery, I called USC's admissions office. After explaining my unusual situation, I was transferred to a senior administrator who had access to older records. "Yes, Miss Walsh," she confirmed after researching my case, "you were indeed offered our President's Scholarship in 2007. When we didn't receive your acceptance by the deadline, we sent 3 follow-up communications and attempted to reach you by phone." "And did anyone respond to those attempts?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "According to our notes, your mother called on April 28th to inform us you had decided to attend another institution." My mother. She had actively intercepted communications and lied to the university. That evening I called my parents' house, a conversation I had been rehearsing all day. My father answered. "Dad," I said, my voice eerily calm, "I received the box of my things yesterday." "Good, good," he replied absently. "Your mother was glad to reclaim the storage space." "I found something interesting in the box," I continued. "My acceptance letter to USC, the one offering me a full scholarship, along with acceptance letters from 6 other universities." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for so long I thought the call had dropped. "Dad." "We should discuss this in person," he finally said, his voice strained. "No, we'll discuss it now. Did you and Mom hide my college acceptance letters from me?" Another long pause. "It was a complicated time, Beatrice. Audrey had just gotten into medical school. The financial demands were enormous." "That doesn't answer my question." He sighed heavily. "Yes, we intercepted the letters. But you need to understand our reasoning." "Enlighten me," I said, ice in my voice. "If you had gone to USC, it would have destroyed your sister. We had always told her she was the academic star of the family. If you had received a prestigious scholarship when she didn't, it would have shattered her self-image. And we simply couldn't afford to support both of you in expensive programs, even with your scholarship covering tuition. So you decided to sacrifice my future for hers." The enormity of their betrayal was still sinking in. "We made a difficult choice based on the needs of the entire family," my mother's voice suddenly interjected. She must have been listening on another extension. Audrey's path to medicine was clear. "Your computer hobby was just that, a hobby. We never imagined you could make a real career of it." "A hobby," I repeated incredulously. USC obviously didn't think it was just a hobby when they offered me a full scholarship to study it. "We did what we thought was best," my father insisted. "Audrey needed our support more than you did. She was more fragile." "More important, you mean," I corrected. "You decided her dreams mattered and mine didn't." "That's not fair, Beatrice," my mother protested. "We always supported you." "You stole my future." I was shouting now, years of suppressed rage boiling over. "You let me believe I was a failure, that I wasn't good enough for any university. Do you have any idea what that did to me?" "And yet look at you now," my father said, as if this somehow justified their actions. "You've done fine without a fancy degree. So clearly we were right that you didn't need it as much as Audrey needed medical school." His words left me speechless. They still didn't see the wrong they had done. In their minds, the end justified the means. The fact that I had succeeded despite their sabotage only reinforced their belief that their decision had been correct. "I don't want to hear from either of you again," I said finally. "Don't call me, don't email me, don't text me. We're done." "Beatrice, you're overreacting," my mother began, but I cut her off. "You stole something precious from me, something that can never be returned. I will never forgive you for that." I ended the call and blocked their numbers. Then I sat in my living room surrounded by the evidence of their betrayal, and finally allowed myself to grieve for the path that had been stolen from me, the experiences I would never have, the person I might have become if given the chance. They had denied me. In the days that followed, I spoke with a therapist to process the trauma of this revelation. She helped me understand that while I couldn't reclaim the past, I could choose how this discovery would affect my future. "Your parents' betrayal doesn't define you," she told me. "Your response to it will." I chose to channel my anger into my work, pushing next level to new heights of innovation. If I couldn't have the USC education I'd earned, I would succeed so spectacularly that no one could ever question my abilities again. The severance from my family was complete. I changed my phone number, created filters to automatically delete their emails, and instructed my assistant to turn away any attempts at contact. The family that had dismissed, diminished, and betrayed me no longer had a place in my life. 2 years after discovering my parents' betrayal, Next Level Inventory Solutions had grown exponentially. Our innovative approach to supply chain management had disrupted the industry, earning us a reputation as the go-to solution for businesses ranging from small retailers to international corporations. We had just closed a Series B funding round of $50 million, valuing the company at over $300 million. Our staff had expanded to 70 people, occupying 2 floors of a gleaming office building in downtown San Francisco. The business press had begun taking notice with features in tech publications and industry journals. I had purchased a luxury condo in Pacific Heights with panoramic views of the bay, a far cry from the cramped studio where I'd opened the fateful box containing my USC acceptance letter. At 32, I had achieved a level of success that exceeded even my most optimistic projections. But the most meaningful change wasn't financial or material. It was the family I had created for myself, a circle of friends and colleagues who valued me for exactly who I was. My closest friend Danny from the boot camp now served as Next Level's Chief Technology Officer. My former mentor, Professor Marcus, had joined our advisory board after retiring from teaching. My partner Alex, a UX designer I'd met at a tech conference, provided emotional support and genuine partnership I'd never experienced before. These relationships, built on mutual respect and genuine caring, showed me what family was supposed to be. They celebrated my victories without jealousy and supported me through challenges without judgment. They saw me, the real me, not as a lesser version of someone else or a means to an end. I still attended therapy regularly, working through the lingering effects of my upbringing and the trauma of discovering my parents' deception. My therapist helped me recognize patterns of people-pleasing and perfectionism that stemmed from never feeling good enough in my family of origin. "You don't need to prove your worth anymore," she reminded me during one session. "You've already established it both professionally and personally." I was beginning to believe her, to internalize the truth that my value wasn't conditional on achievement or others' approval. This hard-won wisdom felt more precious than any business success. Then, on a Tuesday morning in April, an email notification appeared on my phone that sent a jolt through my system. The subject line read, "Congratulations from your sister." Despite my filters, this message from an unfamiliar address had somehow made it through. The sender was audreywalshmd@gmail.com. For several minutes, I simply stared at the notification, unsure whether to delete it, unread, or satisfy my curiosity. Eventually, curiosity won. "Dear Beatrice," the email began, "I just saw the Forbes 30 Under 30 feature about you and your company. Congratulations on your success. I always knew you were smart, but I never realized just how brilliant and determined you truly are. I hope this email finds you well. It's been a long time and I miss my sister, Audrey." The message was brief and seemingly genuine, lacking the manipulative tone I might have expected. Still, I was wary. After 5 years of no contact, why reach out now? Was it pure coincidence that she contacted me just as my financial success was being publicized? I didn't respond immediately, discussing the email with my therapist first. "What do you want to do?" she asked. "Not what you feel obligated to do, but what you want." After careful consideration, I decided to reply with a brief, neutral message. "Thank you for the congratulations. I hope you're doing well in your medical career." This opened a sporadic email exchange over the next few weeks. Audrey shared updates about her life. She had completed her residency in cardiology and was now working at a hospital in Portland. She mentioned difficulties establishing her practice due to the competitive medical landscape and high student loan debt. At first, her messages focused on catching up and reminiscing about more positive childhood memories. But gradually, concerning patterns emerged. She began mentioning financial struggles more frequently, explaining how her medical school debt exceeded $400,000 with interest continuing to accrue. "Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice," she wrote. "All those years of training and I'm barely staying afloat financially. Meanwhile, you've achieved so much in less time. You were always the smart one, even if Mom and Dad couldn't see it." The admission was both validating and suspicious. Was she genuinely acknowledging the family's mistreatment of me or laying groundwork for a financial request? 3 months into our renewed communication, Audrey mentioned that our father had been diagnosed with a serious heart condition requiring extensive treatment. "Insurance is covering some of it, but their deductible is astronomical. They're too proud to ask for help, but I know they're struggling." When I didn't respond to this obvious hint, a more direct email arrived from my mother a week later, the first contact she had attempted in years. "Beatrice, I hope this message finds you well. I'm sure Audrey has mentioned your father's health issues. We would like to arrange a family meeting to discuss some important matters. Would you be available to meet in San Francisco next month? We can come to you." The request sent a wave of anxiety through me. After years of no contact, suddenly they wanted a family meeting to discuss important matters. The timing coinciding with both my public financial success and my father's medical issues seemed far from coincidental. I brought the situation to my weekly dinner with Danny and Alex, seeking their perspectives. "They're going to ask you for money," Danny said immediately. 100% guaranteed. Alex was more measured. "Probably yes, but maybe hearing them out will provide some closure. You can always say no." After considerable thought, I agreed to meet them, but on my terms. I selected an upscale restaurant in the financial district, a venue where I would feel comfortable and in control. I also asked Alex to join for moral support, though he would sit at a separate table nearby. One meeting, I told myself as I prepared for their arrival. One conversation to definitively close this chapter of my life. I arrived at La Petite Maison 30 minutes early, selecting a table with a clear view of the entrance. The restaurant's elegant interior, with its crisp white tablecloths and soft lighting, provided a fitting backdrop for what I expected to be a performance of family reconciliation. Alex took a seat at the bar, close enough to observe but not intrude. His reassuring smile gave me strength as I watched the door, mentally rehearsing the boundaries I had established with my therapist. At precisely 7 o'clock, they entered. My father, noticeably thinner than I remembered, his shoulders slightly stooped, my mother, her hair now fully gray but styled impeccably, and Audrey dressed in expensive but slightly dated clothing, her expression a mixture of anxiety and determination. They spotted me immediately. My mother's face lit up with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Beatrice," she called out too loudly, as though we were beloved family members reuniting after a brief separation, not estranged relatives meeting after years of silence. I stood to greet them, accepting brief awkward hugs from each. Up close, my father looked worse than I had initially thought. His complexion was ashen, his breathing slightly labored. "You look wonderful," my mother gushed as we took our seats. "Success clearly agrees with you." "Thank you," I replied neutrally. "How was your flight?" We engaged in stilted small talk while reviewing menus and ordering drinks. They seemed uncomfortable in the upscale restaurant, with my father wincing slightly at the wine prices. Once this would have made me feel guilty. Now I simply observed their discomfort with detached curiosity. "This is quite a place," my father commented, looking around at the other diners, many of whom were clearly tech industry executives. "You must be doing very well for yourself." "Next level is performing beyond our projections," I confirmed. "We're positioning for either acquisition or IPO within the next 18 months. They nodded as though they understood the business terminology, though I could tell they didn't. After our appetizers arrived, my mother finally broached the purpose of their visit. "Beatrice, we've been following your success from afar. That feature in Forbes was quite something. We've always been so proud of you. The blatant revisionism might have hurt years ago. Now it was merely transparent." "That's not how I remember it," I said calmly. "In fact, I recall being told repeatedly that my interest in computer science was just a hobby, not a real career path." My father shifted uncomfortably. "We may have been mistaken in our assessment. Clearly you've proven yourself." "Yes, I have, without any support or encouragement from my family." I took a sip of water, maintaining eye contact. "But I doubt you flew all the way from Seattle to tell me you were wrong about my career prospects." The three of them exchanged glances, some unspoken communication passing between them. Finally, my mother leaned forward. "Beatrice, we've had some challenging times recently. Your father's health hasn't been good." She placed her hand over his on the table. "He was diagnosed with advanced cardiomyopathy 6 months ago. He needs a specialized surgical procedure that our insurance considers experimental. They're only covering 20% of the cost." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, genuinely concerned about his health, if not the financial implications. "What does that mean for your treatment options, Dad?" He cleared his throat. "Without the procedure, my prognosis is poor. Maybe a year, possibly less. With it, the doctors believe I could have another 10 to 15 good years." "And the cost?" I asked directly. $250,000, my mother replied. "We've exhausted our savings and retirement accounts. We've even put the house on the market, but it's not enough." I nodded, processing this information. "I see. And Audrey, how are things with your medical practice?" My sister, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, looked startled at being directly addressed. "I'm still establishing myself. The student loans are significant. Over $400,000 with interest. The monthly payments are more than my mortgage." "So both of you are in financial difficulty," I summarized. "And you've come to me because—" "Because your family," my mother interjected. "Blood is thicker than water, Beatrice. Despite our differences, family should help family in times of need." I studied each of their faces, my mother's expectant expression, my father's pained resignation, Audrey's poorly concealed desperation. They had come to me as a last resort, not out of genuine desire to reconcile, but because they needed something only I could provide. Before we discuss any financial arrangements, I said carefully I'd like to address something that's been unresolved between us. I reached into my handbag and withdrew a worn envelope, placing it on the table between us. It was the USC acceptance letter with the full scholarship offer, now a decade old but still powerful in its implications. My parents' expressions shifted from confusion to recognition, to dismay as they realized what I had placed before them. "You found it," my mother said quietly. Yes, in a box of childhood mementos you sent me 4 years ago, along with acceptance letters from 6 other universities that I never knew had accepted me. I kept my voice steady, though my hands trembled slightly under the table. You allowed me to believe I was a failure, that I wasn't good enough for any college. You watched me fall into depression, questioning my worth and intelligence, all while knowing the truth. My father looked down at his plate, unable to meet my gaze. We thought we were doing what was best for the family as a whole. You mean what was best for Audrey, I corrected. You chose her future over mine. Audrey's head snapped up. What are you talking about? I turned to her, surprised. You didn't know? Know what? She looked genuinely confused. That I was accepted to USC with a full scholarship. That Mom and Dad hid the acceptance letters from me because they thought it would hurt your self-esteem if I succeeded academically when you were supposed to be the smart one. Audrey's face drained of color. That can't be true. She turned to our parents. Tell me that's not true. Their silence was damning. We had limited resources, my father finally said. We couldn't support both of you in expensive programs. Audrey's path to medicine was clear. Your interest in computers seemed less certain. So you made the decision for me, I said. You stole my chance at USC, at the education I had earned through my own merit. We never thought it would matter this much, my mother insisted. How could we know computers would become such a big industry, or that you would be so successful without a degree? That's not the point, I replied. The point is that you deliberately sabotaged my future because it didn't fit your narrative about which daughter mattered more. I never knew about this, Audrey said, her voice small. I swear, Beatrice. I believed her. The shock and hurt on her face seemed genuine. She had been as much a pawn in our parents' manipulations as I had, though she had benefited from them while I had suffered. Now you come to me for money, I continued, turning back to my parents. Not because you value me or want to make amends, but because I'm useful to you now. That's not fair, my mother protested weakly. We love you, we've always loved you. Perhaps in your way, I acknowledged, but it was always conditional love, dependent on me staying in my assigned role and not threatening the family hierarchy. My father, who had been quiet, finally spoke. What do you want from us, Beatrice? An apology? Would that change anything now? No, I admitted. An apology can't give me back the college experience I earned. It can't undo the years I spent believing I wasn't good enough. But it would at least show that you recognize the harm you caused. My mother reached across the table, trying to take my hand. I pulled back slightly. We're sorry, Beatrice. Truly sorry. We made a terrible mistake, and if we could go back and change it, we would. The words sounded rehearsed, as though they had practiced this concession as part of their strategy to secure my financial help. Audrey was staring at our parents with new understanding. You always told me Beatrice chose community college because she wasn't accepted anywhere else. All those times I bragged about medical school, thinking she hadn't had the same opportunities. She turned to me. I'm sorry too, I had no idea. Her apology felt more sincere than our parents', perhaps because she had nothing financial to gain from it. I took a deep breath, centering myself before making my decision. Here's what I'm prepared to do. I will pay for Dad's medical procedure because I don't want him to suffer regardless of our past. But I won't be covering Audrey's student loans or providing any ongoing financial support to either of you. My mother started to protest, but my father placed a restraining hand on her arm. However, I continued, there are conditions. First, you will tell the entire extended family the truth about the hidden acceptance letters. No more pretending that I simply wasn't college material. My mother blanched at this requirement, her social standing clearly still important to her. Second, there will be no further financial requests ever. This is a one-time intervention, not the opening of an unlimited resource. My father nodded grimly. That seems fair. And third, I need time and space to decide what kind of relationship, if any, I want with you going forward. This doesn't automatically restore our family bonds. There was a heavy silence as they absorbed my terms. Finally, my father spoke. We accept your conditions. And, thank you, Beatrice. You're showing more grace than we probably deserve. The remainder of the dinner passed in subdued conversation. As we waited for dessert, Audrey leaned toward me. I always thought you resented me because I was academically successful and you weren't, she said quietly. I never imagined they had actually sabotaged you. It makes me wonder what other lies shaped our relationship. We'll probably never know the full extent, I replied. But for what it's worth, I don't blame you for their actions. After dinner, we parted with awkward hugs and promises to be in touch about the medical procedure arrangements. As they left the restaurant, Alex joined me at the table. How did it go? He asked, taking my hand. About as expected, I said. They wanted money, I set boundaries, we reached a compromise. And emotionally, I considered the question carefully. I thought I would feel vindicated making them admit what they did, but mostly I just feel sad for all of us. Sad for the relationship we might have had if they had been able to love both their daughters equally. In the weeks that followed, I arranged for my father's medical procedure, working directly with the hospital's billing department rather than giving the money to my parents. The surgery was successful and his prognosis improved significantly. True to their word, my parents disclosed the truth about the hidden acceptance letters to the extended family. I received several shocked messages from aunts, uncles, and cousins expressing disbelief and offering belated congratulations on my success. Audrey and I established a cautious, distant relationship, exchanging occasional texts and emails. She was working to refinance her medical school debt and seemed determined to establish her independence from our parents, perhaps recognizing for the first time the unhealthy dynamics that had shaped our family. As for my parents, our contact remained minimal and formal. I sent birthday cards and received awkward thank you messages for the medical intervention, but the emotional distance remained vast and I suspected unbridgeable. The experience taught me that forgiveness doesn't necessarily mean reconciliation. I could release the anger and resentment that had poisoned me without inviting the same people back into my life to hurt me again. I could acknowledge that my parents did the best they could with their limited emotional capacity without excusing their actions or subjecting myself to further manipulation. Most importantly, I learned that family is defined by love, respect, and mutual support, not by blood ties or obligation. My chosen family, the friends and colleagues who had stood by me, celebrated my successes, and supported me through difficulties were more family to me than those who shared my DNA but had never truly seen me. Success didn't come from proving my worth to those who had undervalued me. It came from believing in myself enough to forge my own path, even when that path was lonely and uncertain. The greatest revenge wasn't in denying my family financial help when they needed it, but in creating a life so full and rich that their absence was no longer a wound but merely a footnote in my story. Have you ever discovered a betrayal that changed how you viewed your entire past? How did you handle it, and were you able to forgive? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more stories about family dynamics, personal growth, and finding your own path. And if you know someone who might benefit from hearing this journey, share it with them too. Remember, sometimes the family we create is more important than the family we're born into. Thank you for listening to my story.